Hey guys, how's it going? I'm Sydney from PhoneDog.com and welcome to Phone Dog Live. I almost called this the Dog Pound. I don't know what I was thinking. But this is Phone Dog Live, our weekly live podcast here on Phone Dog and on our Ustream channel, actually. We do broadcast this on PhoneDog.com, but I'm guessing the majority of you are watching this actually on Ustream. So I'm glad everyone could be here. We do have a great show planned. We have a very busy show planned. There's a lot to talk about. We do have a guest for this week. You may have seen this chart, which I will show you. It's become quite famous now. Let me see. The title of the article is actually called Android Orphans, but you may have seen this chart being circulated through the interwebs. And so Michael Degusta is actually the blogger that created that chart, that did all the research. So we have him on the show to talk a little bit about Android fragmentation. His research inspired me to do some studies of my own and calculate some numbers. So we're going to talk about that. But first, we are going to start with the DROID RAZR because it was just released today, 11/11/11 at 11:11 a.m. So it's a huge phone, LTE. We're going to talk all about that. Aaron has tons of coverage, unboxing, first impressions, HD video samples. He has his video review up on the site that you can watch. So we're going to start off with that. Guys on Ustream, if the sound and everything is all right, just let me know. If there's ever anything wrong with it or I need to change anything, just let me know. But if not, we'll go ahead and get started. So the DROID RAZR, just a beast phone. I mean, what is there to say? Well, what is there to say negatively about it? I guess if you don't like Android, that's probably one negative thing you could say about it. But overall, just a great phone for Verizon. 4.3-inch QHD. It's a Super AMOLED advanced display. Aaron actually found out that it does actually use pin-tile technology, which is, a lot of people hate. But Motorola says it's a different pin-tile technology, or they changed it a little bit so that it doesn't have some of those pixelation problems that previous phones with pin-tile displays had. So if you're not a fan of pin-tile displays, then it's okay because it's a little bit different. You won't see all those usual problems that we had before. But still, Super AMOLED advanced display, dual-core processor, TI OMAP 4430. I know some people, there's a lot. HTC usually uses Snapdragon processors by Qualcomm, and a lot of people don't like that processor. So it does have a TI OMAP processor, 8-megapixel camera, 2.3, Android 2.3 with Motorola Skin. So basically, it's a 4G phone, but the awesome thing is that it's crazy thin. And Aaron brought this out in his unboxing video and in his first impressions that, it was just a couple of months ago when the Droid Bionic was released. We also had the Atrix, which is an HSPA Plus device, but we also had the Samsung Charge. All of these LTE devices, the Thunderbolt, were incredibly thick, and they looked good. They had great designs, but it was obvious that there was some extra bulk added because they were LTE devices, and we were okay with that because, we wanted LTE, and so we were like, all right, we understand. But now Motorola has, just a couple of months after the Bionic is released, they've now found a way and worked their magic to create an incredibly thin 4G LTE device. In fact, Aaron, in his first impressions article, he posted a picture, a side view of the DROID RAZR. And, it might not give you the best indication of exactly how thin this device is, but it's incredibly thin. I think the exact number is 7.1 millimeters, but for carrying the Razr name, they absolutely picked the best phone to, bring the Razr branding back to life because it is so thin. That's a big deal because, we're big on design. I think Apple is really, what has inspired companies to really put to focus a lot on design, which is not a bad thing. And so, design is important to us, and we're always trying to have the thinnest device. I think Apple had, kind of staked their claim in that for a while, and then I think with the Galaxy S2, they had really thin devices, but now this one is just super thin. So great design. Aaron pointed out that it is kind of wide. It has a 4.3-inch display, and there's other large displays out there on the market, but some devices are kind of more narrow, some of them are more wide. Samsung tends to have more wide devices, and then Motorola, they kind of like go back and forth. This one is definitely a more wide device. So, some phones like the Nexus Prime, or the Nexus Prime. I called it the code name. It's so funny. The Galaxy Nexus, I have a feeling where it's more narrow, so it doesn't feel like you're holding a phone with like a 4.6-inch display. But with a DROID RAZR, you're probably going to feel the 4.3 inches because it is more wide rather than narrow. But it's incredibly thin. In fact, Aaron said that sometimes whenever it was in his pocket, he would sometimes forget which pocket it was in because it was so thin he couldn't like feel a bump or anything, or he was just kind of like run your hands over your pocket to see where your phone is or your keys are. He said he couldn't feel it because it was so thin. So great design. It is just kind of wide. The back is Kevlar coated, so pretty heavy duty, supposedly waterproof. The glass is Gorilla Glass, and so you can drop it or try to scratch it, get water on it, and it will be okay. Now, this obviously isn't a rugged device, so don't expect something like Casio's Gs1 phones or the other rugged phones out there, but at least it can withhold a little bit. At least if you drop it, it won't completely shatter. So that's nice. So yeah, if you haven't watched Aaron's video review yet, go do that because obviously he talks about everything. It's basically, you can do no wrong with the phone. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of Motorola's UI. I've said that before. You guys probably know that by now. But you can obviously download a launcher. If you don't like Motorola's UI, you can download a launcher if you want to. And then, of course, there's always rooting if we ever find a way to do that with the DROID RAZR. And, another interesting thing, Verizon's obviously really excited about this because they went all out. They did 11/11/11 on or at 11:11 a.m. And they have, if you haven't seen the advertising campaign for the RAZR, it's pretty sweet too. But another special they're running for the DROID RAZR is you get double the data for the same price. So if you get the RAZR and you buy a 2 gig monthly data plan, then you get 4 gigs for the same price. We don't know how long this is going to last, but it might last forever, but I doubt it. But, for the time being, as long as you get it now, you get double the data for the price of, whatever you paid for originally. So that's kind of a good deal. But, so basically in the review, like I was saying, you really can't go wrong with this device if, you like it and you're thinking about getting it and you're like, I don't know. Definitely get it because it's definitely going to be one of Verizon's best phones. At least until they get the Nexus, the Galaxy Nexus. Now, which one is better? I have a feeling I'm going to have a lot of people asking me that. And honestly, they're both amazing. I have, on phonedog.com, actually, I posted a chart comparing the DROID RAZR, the Galaxy Nexus, the HTC Rezound, the Galaxy S2, and the iPhone 4S. Comparing all of their specs. And we'll talk about that later on in the show. So, I'll discuss that more. But if you want to check that out now, if you want to leave me, and just leave the show and abandon us, that's fine. But we'll talk about that later on in the show. And we'll compare the two devices and then, bring in the Rezound, the Galaxy S2, and the iPhone 4S. Because this is these next couple months are going to be awesome for you guys, for us, for people who love cell phones and love mobile technology. Because we've had great phones in the past, but it just seems like, I don't know, maybe we say this every 3 months. It just seems like right now, this is just it, man. We're in the prime right now, and 3 months later, we could have like quad-core processors in our phones, and we're going to have that eventually, and it might be in 3 months. But just right now is just a great time to buy a phone, and it always is around the holiday season. This is when manufacturers bring out their best, and the DROID RAZR is definitely one of the best. 1080p HD video capture resolution on the DROID RAZR. Watch the video. It's on PhoneDog. It's on our YouTube channel. Aaron recorded it. It is the best audio and video quality I've seen and heard. And this is one thing that I've said before, how, I'm impressed by camera specs. I'm impressed that we have, 5 8 megapixel cameras on cell phones that can record 720p or 1080p video. I'm impressed that, Apple supposedly says that the iPhone 4S, its camera will be able to replace a point-and-shoot camera. I'm impressed that they've put that much time and energy into the camera, but so far, the actual quality of those cameras hasn't impressed me at all. The audio is usually just not good at all, especially on HTC devices. Video quality is, iffy, but even the best cell phone, video capture, you can still tell it's on a cell phone. So I'm impressed by what they're doing, but, I've said before, I'm still going to carry around a point-and-shoot camera, when I'm on vacation or when I'm actually going to take pictures at a party or something. I'm still going to carry around a camera because it just nothing so far has really been like, wow, okay, I could actually use that. But the DROID RAZR, the audio quality was spectacular for a cell phone, and probably if you were to compare it to a camcorder or a point-and-shoot camera, it might even rival that. I'm not sure because I haven't compared them yet, but from what I've heard of from other cell phones, the audio quality is great and the video quality is also excellent. So check that out on phonedog.com. 2-part video. Aaron answers your questions from Twitter. Some people had some questions about the phone, so he answers those. But basically, super thin, super fast. In my experience, Verizon's LTE is the best. Now, that's not going to be the same for everybody. For some people, just because of coverage, Sprint's WiMAX may be the best. T-Mobile's HSPA Plus. T-Mobile's HSPA Plus is killing it, especially with a 42 megabits per second grade. But, it's going to vary, but, at least for me in my area, and Aaron said this too, he said he's convinced that Verizon has installed a repeater somewhere right outside his office because the speeds are just that fast. And that was when I had another Verizon LTE device, the Stratosphere. I was like, wow, this is not normal. I mean, I know LTE is going to be fast, but I was actually even afraid to recommend, or say those speeds because I was like, there's no way that everyone's going to get these speeds. So, maybe we happen to get lucky and we just got, good coverage areas. But regardless, LTE is fast, the phone's fast, dual-core processor, and it's basically just an all-around awesome phone. So, yeah, if you're on Verizon, I would definitely recommend it. And we haven't updated our top smartphones list on PhoneDog in a while, and I know someone brought that out to me this week actually on Twitter. They said, when are you guys going to update your top smartphones list? Because T-Mobile, that list is like way outdated. I'm like, yeah, I know. But we actually have some other stuff planned for that content sector. So I won't tell you because I actually don't know all the details. But so even if you don't see the DROID RAZR on that list, it doesn't mean that it's not an awesome device. I would still check it out. So that's the DROID RAZR. 15 minutes, 10 minutes could barely cover everything. So watch the review. Aaron covers web browsing, more on the display. He obviously has the HD video sample on our YouTube channel and on phonedog.com. Call quality, just everything. So watch the review, and he said he's going to have a written review too. So our written reviews, they're usually more detailed, because we have more time. So you can watch that too. But that's the DROID RAZR, and we will move on now to a touchy subject. At least it appears it's a touchy subject. I had no idea it was so touchy, but apparently it is. Android fragmentation. If you haven't seen, I'll go back and show you guys. This is a chart that's been circulating the web. We posted on phonedog.com, and the man who did the research on this problem of Android fragmentation, he's actually going to join the show. So before I get on to that, let me call him up on Skype, and we'll see if we can't get him on, and he'll talk a little bit about his research and his findings. Michael Degusta from the Understatement blog. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. By the way, guys, if the sound fluctuates or if it's not okay, just let me know on Ustream, and I'll try to get everything fixed. I am going to have to turn the volume down just so it's not blaring in my ear, but let me know if I need to fix anything. So, let's see.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Good. Great to hear from you. Guys, this is Michael from the Understatement blog. So as I mentioned, he recently did a study on Android fragmentation. His findings can be seen on the Wall Street Journal, laptopmag.com, Gizmodo, pocketlint.com, and they also inspired me to do some research of my own, which I recently published on the site in an article called How Deep is Android's Fragmentation Problem? He's a graduate of Stanford, and he obviously runs the Understatement.com, which is a blog that focuses on researching and visualizing information often related to technology. And if you guys haven't visited the blog yet, do that, because he has several very detailed studies on several different topics recently of the ones that I've seen, a couple on Google+, the Kindle tablets, and a few other ones that you guys may be interested in. So, Michael, thanks for joining the show.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks. So first of all, just tell the guys a little bit about this study in case they haven't seen it. I'll show the chart up on the screen again, but just what exactly was your methodology? What were some of your findings? Just tell us about the study overall.
Sure. So basically, over time, I think we all have lots of references to Android phones not getting updates or updates getting delayed. And I sort of decided to try and go back and look at every single phone that came out from the very beginning of Android back with the G1 in 2008 and try and track down every update that was released for every phone that came out for a couple years. In this chart, I went up through the end of June last year and basically tried to put that into a visual form so you could see just how out of date or up-to-date each phone that was released was. And basically I did that by a lot of tedious Googling and going through manufacturer sites and carrier sites and forums and things like that, and attempting to track down each update that ever happened and how long each phone was on sale for, to sort of paint this picture of what had gone on in the Android phone ecosystem over the last couple of years.
Okay, so definitely a lot of research. And if you guys see the chart, you can see that he tracked basically, what version of Android each phone was released with, how far behind it might have been through the course of its life, or shelf life, basically. And so basically, what did you find? What was the basic gist of your study and your findings?
So basically, when you look at all the phones, so there was 18 phones released over this sort of 2-year period, and 7 of them never ran a current version of Android. 12 of the 18, so 2/3 of them, barely ever ran a current version. The majority of them were at least 2 major versions behind, well within the 2-year contract that most of us have to sign up for in the States. And so by the end of that 2-year contract, your phone is at least 2 major versions of Android out of date in most of those cases. And even though almost all of the phones covered here are still under contract, only 3 of the 18 run Gingerbread today, and most of them obviously never will.
Yeah, so I think that was the thing that I was most surprised by, was just, to look at it from the consumer point of view. Like you said, we're locked into a 2-year contract. And so when somebody buys a phone, when you look at it from their point of view of paying all this money and then they're hardly ever running the most current version, and then of those phones, they'll probably never get the version that was released a year, or Gingerbread, right, that's going to be released, or that was released a year ago. So were you surprised? I mean, were you expecting to find that? What most surprised you about it?
It was worse than I expected, because I think that, and probably a lot of us who follow this space a lot, we sort of see and remember things through sort of geek glasses, if you will, right? I've had forgotten about how many miscellaneous devices the manufacturers and carriers have shipped over time, all of which have been almost universally neglected, right? We sort of only tend to remember sort of big high-profile releases like the Evo 4G or the original Droid or some of these phones, and I certainly had forgotten about all the other phones that have been out there getting sold and getting bought, and so it definitely was worse than I expected in that regard. Also, in terms of being multiple versions behind, I sort of suspected like some people are probably still on Froyo and things like that. Did not expect so many phones to have shipped on Cupcake, Donut, and still be on that today. It's pretty shocking to me.
Yeah, and just so you guys know, some of the phones that he's talking about are, like you mentioned, the Evo, the Droid Incredible, the Nexus One, the Motorola Droid, the Samsung Moment. These are all very high-profile phones, and yet, if you look at this chart, even if you don't get all of the information, just by looking at all the different colors, you can tell what a mess it really is. Also, I forgot to ask you in the beginning, just for the record, are you an Android hater?
No, definitely not. I tried hard to do this in a very objective way. I go back and forth between two countries. I have two phones. I have a Nexus S. I'm not a hater, and in fact find this to be somewhat depressing. I wish this wasn't the situation for support for Android. I think it's unfortunate and unnecessary.
Yeah. Now, you obviously use Android. What do you think about fragmentation as a problem? I mean, obviously it exists, but do you think it hurts Android at all, or are we kind of just being unreasonable by saying that it is a problem by even mentioning it?
I definitely think it's a problem. I think there's a couple different ways to look at this. One is to say, hey, it's a very fragmented ecosystem, and that's hard for developers. It's hard for consumers who don't know what phone to buy. It makes them less happy with their purchase in the long run when they're not getting the best Android experience possible, right? I mean, yeah. Presumably, and I think we all believe this, the newer versions are better. They have more features. They work better. The web browser's better. They can run more apps. And a lot of users aren't getting that experience. So when they go to buy their next phone, I think that they're going to be less likely to stick to Android than they would be if they were getting the best experience. So they're going to say, hey, I had an Android phone, and I had these limitations or shortcomings or problems with it, and they're going to associate that with Android, not necessarily realizing that, oh, I've been running, Donut, which is ancient, right? And things aren't that way anymore. So I definitely think it's a problem for that. And I also think it's a problem that, the appeal of Android for app developers is supposed to be that there's such a mass market, such a large market out there. But if the only way to sort of access that large market is to develop for the lowest common denominator of operating system and such, then that sort of limits the quality and the potential of apps to sort of take advantage of all the latest and greatest features that the phones and the operating system support. So it's bad in that regard too. And it's also asking, the third thing I have to point out, is asking for a big security problem at some point. If somebody discovers a problem in some of these old phones or old versions of the OS, it's going to be very hard at this point for manufacturers and carriers and Google to go back and update, the Motorola Click XT on T-Mobile from a year and a half ago. That's not likely to happen.
Yeah. Well, fans of Android, they mentioned that if you want the latest version of Android and it's not available for your phone yet, you can just root your device, use, CyanogenMod. But I think a lot of people don't realize that rooting is actually made available because of holes in the system. So there is a potential there for security issues. I mentioned in the article that I posted some of the features that people are missing out on. And whether you think those features are important or not, I think a lot of it is like what you mentioned, overall performance, apps that just aren't available for certain versions of Android. And overall, the visual look at it. I mean, if you go back to earlier versions of Android, it doesn't look good. It looks like a beta operating system, and they're just now kind of getting out of that. And so people are dealing with old software, old versions, old performance, and then, people wonder why people who don't like Android call it crap. It's probably because they've been using a device that doesn't have the latest version. So I guess, some of it is a matter of opinion, but obviously, as your research shows, it's definitely a big problem. So some of the studies that I did, like I said, your research inspired me to do a couple of studies of my own. And after doing some calculations, I'll post the chart for you guys. After doing some calculations and going through the percentages that Google has given us and taking out the honeycomb devices and just looking at phones, basically there are 102 million 30,000 or roughly 54% of devices, phones, that are behind, which is over half. Over half of Android phones are running a version that's behind, and keep in mind behind as in 2.3, which was released a year ago, 2.2, which was released 2 years ago. So it's really ridiculous.
And I think that the other two things to remember is that, one, all of these phones are about to be another major version behind.
Yeah.
As soon as the Galaxy Nexus comes out with Ice Cream Sandwich. And the other thing about the Google numbers to remember is that those are only drawing on people who've used the Android market in the past 2 weeks. So you have to imagine that it's possibly even worse than that, as far as, hey, people have these older phones or aren't sophisticated users, are less likely to have gone on the market every couple of weeks to check for great new apps and things like that. So
yeah, true. Yeah. And I think, like what you said, whenever Ice Cream Sandwich is released, we're all going to be behind, even the ones of us who do root our devices and who are, a very important part of that community. Even for a certain period of time, they won't be able to get Ice Cream Sandwich, and that's a big update. And so, eventually they'll get it, and obviously Google is trying to be better about it. But I think you would agree it's time for, Google has put some things into place, the Update Alliance. It's time for us to start to see the fruits of those labors, and it's just, stop talking about it, but actually do something about it.
Definitely. I mean, it's a little bit bizarre that, that was in May that they came out with the Update Alliance and made a big push, and it was like, oh, great, it seems like they're aware this is a problem, and we need to start developing a support infrastructure with our partners to provide support, kind of like in the way that Microsoft and Dell and HP do for computers. You don't go to Best Buy and buy a computer and find out that you bought the wrong one, and now you're not going to get any more updates. But now here we are 6 months later, and it seems like no one said another word about that, and they haven't come out with a statement saying, hey, as of this date, this 18-month guarantee will be in effect with these devices, so.
Yeah, the 18-month guarantee, we haven't gotten confirmation of, are those devices that have already been updated to Gingerbread, or is it just the ones that shipped with Gingerbread? Because that number is obviously much lower. Yeah. When is it actually going to take effect?
Nor have we gotten confirmation about what does it mean to get updates for 18 months. If 18 months after I get my phone, I finally get an update to a year-old gingerbread. Does that qualify as, hey, you got updates for 18 months? You're not current for 18 months, but you got an update. So there hasn't been clarification on exactly what that means either, or how promptly people are going to get updates. Because even like you talked about with the RAZR coming out today, that all first half of next year, it's still quite a wait for people who are itching to run the
ice cream sandwich. Yeah. Well, thank you for your studies. It kind of opened my eyes. I think I've been a lot like other Android fans. I've just said, well, fragmentation is obviously a problem because there are devices running, 2.2 and whatever. But I kind of just brushed it off as, well, it's not that big of a deal to me. I don't care what version of Android I run. But your research definitely opened my eyes a lot and then inspired me to do some of my own. So thank you for that. And thanks for being on the show and sharing your research with us.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And again, guys, if you haven't visited his blog, The Understatement, it's pretty interesting. He does several other studies. So thank you, Michael, for being on the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.
So, that was Michael Degusta from the Understatement blog. Again, thank you for being on the show. So, fragmentation, it's a problem, and a lot of people may not feel like it's a huge problem and it may not bother them, which is fine. I think if it doesn't bother you that you're not running the latest version of Android, then that's okay. If it doesn't bother you, then it doesn't bother you. But for people like us who it does bother, it's definitely something that irritates us. But just seeing the numbers was interesting. There was one more chart, I just wanted to show you guys, just, one more interesting number. I went through, there's about 103 devices that have been released, Android phones, I have to leave out tablets, Android phones that have been released in the past year from going back to November 2010, excluding devices by, no-name manufacturers that we haven't really heard of at all, but just, 103 devices worldwide. And if you look at this chart, of those 100, you can see just under half of them were released with a current version of Android. The other half was one version behind. There were a few devices that were 2 versions behind. And then of the devices that were not current, only half of those were eventually updated. So, again, it's definitely something that affects several phones. Whether you think it's a problem or not is, perfectly fine. But if you do find it to be a problem, it's something that we would like to have fixed. And I know that some people, and then one more thought and then I have to move on, but some people mentioned how, computers run different versions of, Windows or Mac OS. And, people have asked, well, why don't you mention that? Why don't you mention how many iPhones aren't running iOS 5 or how many Windows PCs aren't running, Windows 7? And I think that's obviously a valid thing. I happen to not mention it because I wanted to focus on Android. If I were to focus on every OS on the market, the article would have been so long, and I just simply wanted to point out, Android's fragmentation problem, and it's eye-opening, but again, it doesn't always bother some people. But that's the article. Check out his findings. Check out my article. Taylor also wrote an interesting piece, Should Manufacturers Wait to Release Phones with Current Software? That's also interesting. Speaking of fragmentation, the Epic 4G just now got gingerbread. So there you go. Again, further proof of what we're saying. But anyway, we'll move on, and we'll move on. I wanted to talk about Windows Phone, just to keep everything even. We have Android. We'll talk about Windows Phone. The Nokia Lumia 800. This is something that it seems like this phone has been able to pop up on every single podcast that we've had for the past month or so, and it just, something is always happening with it. That's why I always bring it up. But this week, we actually got the phone. Aaron has an unboxing up, so you can watch that. He doesn't quite have his video review up on the site, but he does have his first impressions, so you can read his first impressions. overall, basically, the hardware is beautiful, he said, which is a good thing to have. And I wanted to mention this statement from his First Impressions article. He said, if Nokia brings Windows Phone devices like the new Lumia 800 to the US next year, I could see the platform experiencing some growth. So it's a beautiful device, and the hardware is great. And I think that's what people really look for, at least in a new platform. If they haven't used Windows Phone and their first impression of it is some, cheap plastic phone, or that, doesn't have great build quality, or not, maybe not the best screen or just the best specs overall, they may not be inclined to look at it as much, which is, sometimes disappointing because we know that specs aren't everything. But, for the average consumer, the way it looks is important. And so I think it's, gosh, that was loud. That was my phone. I don't know if you heard it, but it was vibrating over there. Anyway, so the hardware looks great. And, as Aaron brought out, that's a good thing. If Nokia wants to make a dent, that's a good thing. And we talked about that when the Lumia was first announced. It comes with a few Nokia apps, maps. Let me think. Nokia's Map, Nokia Drive, Nokia Music, and Nokia Maps, which are great apps. I think Google Maps has been always just the standard. It's basically what's on every phone, Android phones and then the iPhone, and so that's basically every phone. So, Google Maps has always been the standard, but if you use Nokia's Maps application, it's actually very well designed. Their 3D maps, it looks great, so it's not like some shoddy, third world Swedish version. It's a very well designed map application, drive. So it does have navigation, turn-by-turn navigation, which is nice because thus far Windows Phone doesn't quite have that. It has it. Mango, the Mango update brought some big improvements, and it does actually give you turn-by-turn navigation with voice talking, but it's not. I guess the best way to put it is not automatic. So if you're driving and you turn and it says in 500 yards, which is not very far, but it turn left, it won't automatically tell you unless you physically scroll through each time you take an action, each time you perform an action. So if you perform an action, you scroll through, it'll tell you the next action once you get close to it. So it's like halfway turn by turn, and then it's halfway still just driving directions. So it's better, but straight up turn by turn navigation would be nice. And I may be wrong about this, don't quote me, but I am pretty certain that I heard that Nokia will bring maps to all Windows Phone devices in the US. And I got the impression that that was not just Nokia phones. So I may be wrong about that, but I think that's what I heard. Don't quote me. But it would be nice since we don't have it right now. 8-megapixel camera, he said he was kind of disappointed by the 8-megapixel camera, which is surprising because Nokia has a pretty good history of having some great hardware and great cameras with their Carl Zeiss lens. So I was kind of surprised by that. But then, like I said, camera is one of those things that manufacturers have focused on so much in the past year. It's not surprising that eventually somebody caught up to Nokia. The iPhone 4S, obviously, people say has the best camera on a cell phone today, and then like I said, the DROID RAZR has the 1080p video capture. What I said, the best I've seen and heard. So the camera was a little disappointing, he said, but I'm sure it's still a decent camera. Of course, I can't say that. Maybe we'll get some more details in the full review, and he'll tell us kind of a little more of what he's talking about and how the camera performed. 1.4 single core. ST Ericsson Nova Thor processor, 16 gigs of internal memory, non-expandable. You can't remove the battery because it's all it's unibody design, so you can't remove anything. But still, check out his First Impressions article, and that's the 800. Now it's only available in Europe. I almost said in the Europes. But you can buy it if you're in the U.S. It's an HSPA Plus device, so if you're on AT&T, you can buy the Lumia 800, plug in your AT&T SIM card, and you'll get HSPA Plus, which is great. It only takes a micro SIM, so you'll either have to shave down your SIM card a little bit, or if you have an iPhone, then you already have a micro SIM. If you're on T-Mobile, it will be Edge only. They use different 3G frequencies or bands, so it'll be Edge only. So depends on if you want to do that. But his review is not up on the site yet. Like I said, maybe Monday or maybe this weekend. We'll have to wait and see. But the first impressions article and the unboxing, I'm sure he'll have an HD video sample at some point, or at least in the review, he'll give us details on that. So, no, not a whole lot of details because he's still testing it out, but that's the Lumia. He posted pictures, and I wanted to show you the pictures. Speaking of hardware, I forgot to show this to you originally, but the device looks great. So here's the Lumia. Where'd it go? Do I only have? Oh, there it is. The Lumia, you can see, just great all-around design. It has a super AMOLED display. An AMOLED display with clear black technology. Here's another picture. A back view, just very svelte is a word that Aaron uses a lot, and I thought it very accurately described the phone. And there's another side view kind of from the top. So that's the Lumia. I'm excited. I use Windows Phone, so I always root for Windows Phone because I use it, but also because it's the underdog, and I want to see an underdog succeed. Whether it's Windows Phone or WebOS, I don't care. I just want one of them to just come out of the ashes and be successful. Windows Mobile was such a mess, and Windows Phone is so much the complete opposite of that you just hope that it can actually be successful. So we'll move on. We'll move back to Android. We'll look at tablets, and then we'll get on to the open Q&A, since I know it's 4:42, so we have a couple of minutes. And then we'll move on to that. I did want to talk about WebOS, but it doesn't look like we're going to have time to get to that, but that's okay, because I have a feeling you guys are tired of hearing of WebOS. I know for me, the debacle with WebOS, it's almost as frustrating as watching the NBA lockout. It's like constantly back and forth. You think HP is going to fix it, and then no, we're not. Oh yeah, we're going to bring it back. Oh no, we're not. I think this might. No. So it's just like, oh my gosh, just make a decision already. But anyway, the Asus ePad Transformer Prime, the official name, was announced this week, and it was announced right on the heels of Nvidia introducing its quad-core Tegra 3 processor, formerly called Call-L. And this thing is freaking like off the chain because so it's got 4 cores, quad core obviously, but it has a 5th companion core, and it's basically 5 cores, but the 5th core is being called, or the process is being called variable symmetric multiprocessing technology. So basically, for general everyday tasks of music, listening to music, or just doing basic things, the companion core will take care of all of that. It'll handle, just looking at pictures, things that aren't very, process intensive. And then when you are doing something like, playing a game or browsing the web or doing multiple tasks at the same time, then each core will kick in depending on how many you need. There was a great video that Nvidia used to kind of show you, when the quad core technology will come into play, and then when having that companion core will actually, really be helpful. So very interesting there. And the best thing, besides the speed and overall performance, is that it is more battery efficient. So Nvidia says the Tegra 3 packs 5 times the power, obviously, because it has 5 cores compared to 1. 5 times the power of the Tegra 2, but consumes, it's my phone again vibrating, but consumes up to 61% less battery. So having that companion core where when it's just minor things, that will just kind of kick in, take care of the little tasks, not use a lot of the battery, and then when you need 2 of the cores or 4 of the cores, then it'll jump into hyperactive mode, which will obviously use more battery. But so the Transformer Prime is shaping up to be a really great device. Came out of nowhere. I mean, Asus, the Transformer was an awesome tablet. It was one of my favorites because I loved the idea of it has a keyboard, but it's not like some cheap flimsy keyboard that you bought at Brookstone, or Sky Mall with the rubbery. It's basically like a laptop keyboard. You can hook it up to the tablet, and it's like a little netbook, very high quality. I thought that was a great idea, and I loved it. And the Transformer Prime looks to be even better. Quad-core technology, an 8-megapixel camera with some pretty interesting camera specs, and then USB and mini HDMI out ports and SD card slots. 32 gig models and 64 gig model, $499 and $599 respectively. So kind of on the pricey side, and then the keyboard is an extra $150. So, not for everybody. Personally, I leaned away from the, higher priced tablets. $500 isn't bad, especially considering that it's a quad-core tablet and you get that keyboard, if you want to pay the extra $150. So, not too bad of a price considering what you get. Definitely is going to be pretty awesome. You can see the hardware, it just looks great. It's going to come in this color as well as a champagne color. And I think one of these pictures I have, this is the champagne model. So you can see it looks great. It's very thin and just looks great overall. And then it will be running Honeycomb. I did not write down the version. I believe it might be 3.2 possibly. But that's the Asus Transformer Prime, and I know the Transformer was very popular tablet. I think just because of the price, it was a very reasonable price considering what you got, and then it actually performed well, and then that extra keyboard dock that was, high quality build. It was a pretty popular tablet. I know a lot of people are excited about this coming in December. So there's that. And we have a lot of tablets launching this month. Let me look at my calendar. The Kindle Fire is coming on the 15th. The Galaxy Tab 7.0 is coming on the 16th. And then we have the Nook tablet coming. And then this one. This was a little different because the Nook tablet, the Kindle Fire, and the Galaxy Tab 7.0, they all have 7-inch displays. And this one is obviously a beast tablet, but anyway, that's the Asus Transformer. And so with that, we will move on to the open Q&A. Oh, you know what? I forgot. I said I was going to get onto this, but I'm obviously not going to have time. When I was talking earlier about the DROID RAZR and the Galaxy Nexus, I mentioned that I had a comparison chart that I wanted to show you guys. I won't have time, obviously, to talk about it, but it is on phonedog.com. So if you want to look at this comparison chart, it basically, I took every feature of each phone. I've seen comparison charts in the past, even with these devices, where it compared 5 or 6 different areas. But I wanted one that's in depth. So virtually every aspect of each phone is compared in this chart. It's a very fair comparison. Again, I've seen other charts where it had a Siri category, so obviously the iPhone was the only one that was going to fit into that category, and all the other ones got X's, and I'm like, that's not even fair. So there is no Siri category, there's no widgets category, it's just straight up comparison, so you can make a decision and see which one is the best. But that's on phonedog.com. Obviously I won't be able to talk about it now, but you can check it out on phonedog.com, and we will now talk. We're not going to talk about anything. We're going to do the open Q&A, and I'm going to talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. So ask me a question, any question you want, and I'll try my best to answer it. I'm on Ustream. I'm on Facebook. I'm on, I guess, Twitter, if you want to be on Twitter. I don't know. I usually don't get any questions from Twitter, but okay. She probably mentioned this already. Oh, okay. Ustream has been a little wonky today. Sometimes it's like this and sometimes it's not. The chat stream, sometimes it doesn't. It's supposed to scroll all the way down even when I get new comments, but sometimes it doesn't, and today it's been like that. So if I jump around, if you're like, why is she answering a question from 5 minutes ago? It's because it's a little bit off. I know it's 4:50. I'll try to add a couple, 5 or 10 minutes extra after 5 o'clock. That way we can still get 15 minutes of open Q&A. Okay, so let's see. Question: should I get the Wildfire S at $150 off contract Virgin Mobile? I didn't get the rest of that. Virgin Mobile Canada. Yeah, I think that's a good price. You know, the Wildfire S is not a device that's going to blow you away. It's small and cute, actually. But, you know, it's made by HTC, so it has great build quality. Sense, you know, kind of tends to bog down a phone. That UI, it's a little heavy, so your performance isn't going to be awesome. But for $150, yeah, I think that's a good price. And Virgin Mobile, they have some pretty good plans. So, yeah, I'd recommend that. Have you ever seen videos on the channel? No, I don't think I have. Which would you buy? Hold on, sorry. For the $299 price, Rezound, Galaxy Nexus, or the Razr? You know, personally, I've gone back and forth on this, and after making that chart, because I compared those three devices plus the Galaxy S2 and the iPhone 4S, and I was like, wow, this device is a little bit better, and then I would get to another category, wow, this one's a little bit better, so it's really hard to say. And honestly, I mean, you can't go wrong. I really can't tell you which one to get because they're both equally awesome, just in different areas. You know, one of them will excel in the display, the other one maybe has a better processor or just a different processor that performs better. So between those, you know, for $299, I probably wouldn't pay $300 for any phone, but I guess if I had to, I don't know, I might go with the Galaxy Nexus just because it would be nice to have a phone that runs Ice Cream Sandwich. You know, we had this discussion, I might have been last week, you know, should you buy a phone now without Ice Cream Sandwich? And it's definitely not a bad idea, but I just think, you know, considering how huge Ice Cream Sandwich is, how big of an update it is, I just think having the Galaxy Nexus would be a huge advantage. Do you know if the Lumia 800 has both Nokia and Bing Maps or just Nokia Maps? You know, I'm honestly not sure, mostly because I don't think anyone's thought to ask that yet. But I think because of that, I'm going to say that it has both, just because, you know, I haven't heard anyone say any different, and I can't imagine Microsoft not including Bing Maps. So I'm going to guess yes, but honestly, I don't know. You could ask Aaron about that. Let's see. Let me get a drink of water. Sydney, why do you hate on Brookstone? It's everything you want, but nothing you need. I know, that's my point. It's a bunch of awesome crap, basically. Do you think I will like Windows Phone 7 coming from iOS? Yeah, you know, in a lot of ways, iOS and Windows Phone are very similar because they're both extremely simple. iOS has a grid of icons. Windows Phone has a grid of tiles. And there's not a whole lot of hoopla. You know, it's white background or a black background, depending on which one you go with. The colored tiles, which are basically, you know, your shortcuts, all the ones that you want to have close, you know, and readily available. And then you scroll over, and it's all of your apps. So, you know, very simple. Coming from iOS, it should be a very similar experience. But then, you know, once you dig into the UI, I think Windows Phone is more elegant and beautiful, but it's still very simple, and so I think you'll probably like it. People coming from Android, it's a very, very different experience. And so a lot of people coming from Android, they're like, there's no widgets, there's no icons, there's no notification with toggles, there's no toggles, there's no live, there's like so many visual aspects that it's missing, you know, coming from Android. But it's not a bad thing, you know, personally. But obviously, if you like those things, then you are going to see it as a bad thing. But coming from iOS, you should be fine. Did I just spend like 5 minutes talking about that? I probably could have answered that with one sentence. I ramble a lot. Thank you for the response and your opinion. You're welcome. Do you think the Razr could save you from being shot with a gun? Probably not. It's got a Kevlar back. I doubt it. Sydney, will you marry me? No, I'm sorry. I'm already married. Sorry. Is Virgin Mobile USA getting a new BlackBerry? Sorry, excuse me. This I had earbuds from earlier for the call, and now they're like hanging all over the place. what was your question? Oh yeah, the BlackBerry. I get asked that question just about every week. Actually, I think every week I do get asked that. And I don't know. My hypothesis is that yes, just because they have the old BlackBerry curve, I'm assuming eventually they'll upgrade that, but I just don't know when. And do you think the Galaxy Nexus will score a higher quadrant standard and speed test higher than the Rezound? I don't know. I couldn't tell you. And if anything, they would just be like really, really close. Possibly because of Ice Cream Sandwich, the better performance overall built into the OS. It might be faster, but I'm not sure. BlackBerry sucks, okay? Gosh, it's just jumping everywhere. Let me see if there's a question on Facebook that I missed. Has both. Oh, Aaron. Okay, Aaron answered your question. I don't know if you saw this on Facebook. I'm assuming he was answering the question about Bing Maps on the Nokia device. Apparently it has both Bing Maps and Nokia Maps. So thank you, Aaron, for answering that. Let me see. Is the BlackBerry style a good phone? I mean, personally, I don't really like the style. If you're going to upgrade right now, you might as well just get one of the new BlackBerries, the 9900 or the new Torch. I would recommend getting one of those. Would you expect the Galaxy Tab 10.1 to get Ice Cream Sandwich, or do you think it will be left with Honeycomb? I'm not sure. The only details we have about any devices getting Ice Cream Sandwich is Motorola and HTC said that they'll get Ice Cream Sandwich as soon as possible, whatever that means. And then HTC actually came out and said that a bunch of their, I think 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 other devices will get Ice Cream Sandwich. But other than that, we don't have any solid information, so I can't tell you. My guess, I mean, yeah, it's a very popular tablet. I would imagine so, but I mean, honestly, I just can't say for sure. Why does everyone compare Dogfight? Missed that. Is RIM in a bad position right now? Everyone on the bus at school in Canada has one, and they're mostly teens. Well, in Canada, yeah. Because, RIM is based in Canada, so a lot of the economy is based on RIM's success. But, are they in a bad position? Yeah, but they can easily climb out of it. It's not, they haven't passed the point of no return. It's just, where will they go from here to, get themselves out of this hole? I think their new devices are a great start. Those are great devices. For BlackBerry users, they'll be awesome. It's just, they have to keep making better devices. And I think the price was a bad idea. Thanks for your input. You're welcome. Based on your personal opinion, will HP bring WebOS back, or should they? Why or why not? Was it Taylor or Evan wrote an article about what should HP do with WebOS. They keep going back and forth. Should they just drop it, just kill it, or what? And I think it was, what everyone is thinking, what he said, they should just license it. If they don't want to use it, if they don't know what to do with it, then they should license it just like Google does with Android and what Microsoft does with Windows Phone 7. I think that would probably be the best thing because they obviously have no idea what to do with it. So even if they were to decide to actually use it, I don't even know if they would do the right thing. So I agree with what he said. Sydney, what are your opinions on the Galaxy Note? It's obviously, not in the US yet. So I haven't used the Note, but I wanted to tell you guys about this. I'm glad I get a chance to. I went to Best Buy the other day because I love going to Best Buy. And Best Buy actually has the Galaxy. It's called the Galaxy Player 5.0, but it's basically the Galaxy Note, except not a cell phone. It's just a tablet essentially. And it was interesting because it was the first time I'd really seen it and got some hands-on time with it. And honestly, I didn't really like it because, the 5.3-inch display, it's basically too big to be a phone, but too small to be a tablet. And so you're like, well, what is it? Then it's nothing. I mean, there's certain people who will like it, but I think it's such a small group of people. I was using it and I was like, okay, as a tablet, but then, once I started using it and kind of getting an idea of what it would be like, it was too small to be a tablet. I think 7 inches is really the smallest you can get for a tablet. So, it's 5 inches. I mean, it's basically like I'm using a phone, so it's not quite a tablet, but then at the same time, it's too big for a phone. I put it up to my ear and it's like this giant, it's like an iPad. Obviously, it's half the size, but I mean, it's too big to be a phone, but too small to be a tablet. So really, I was just like, I don't even want this thing, so I just put it down. So that's what I think about it. Maybe, for some people, like I said, it would be great, but yeah, that's what I think, basically. Do jazz fingers. Okay. Well, the features are just so drastically different that most people would easily be able to decide on their own. I think you guys are having a conversation. Does she have ADD? No. Oh, wow, I'm way behind. I'm like 15 minutes ago. Okay. Do you think I should buy the Galaxy Player or iPod Touch 4G for a Christmas gift as a media device? That's basically, do you prefer Android or iOS? I mean, with iOS, you have more apps. I will say for a media player, I mean, you can't beat iTunes, its simplicity. I know a lot of people don't like iTunes, but it's so simple. It's out of the box, you sign in or get a screen name, and then, all the songs are right there. Samsung has a media library, so you could possibly compete with that, but I just think that, Apple's ecosystem is just great, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't like iPhones. I probably wouldn't buy an iPhone. I just don't like the interface. I don't like Apple, but they have a great ecosystem, and there's nothing wrong with that. They just happen to have the best one right now. Again on Facebook, are there any questions? Okay, so Aaron was referring to that. I'm 5 minutes late on that one. Okay. Are you disappointed with the lack of hardware growth with Windows Phone 7? I mean, they still use WVGA displays and most don't have a front-facing camera and no real 4G. Yeah, I think that I talked about that last week, how the new Windows Phone devices are great. They have great displays. They're better displays than what they were, whether it's AMOLED or just, higher resolution. The hardware is great. They have new 1.4 gigahertz processors, better cameras. But I think, during that broadcast, I realized, these devices are not what they should be. And I think once I realized that, then yes, I am disappointed because whether I was expecting it or I just think that Microsoft should do more, I'm not sure. But it is a fact that Microsoft will need some killer devices to really draw attention. And, Windows Phone doesn't need a dual-core processor, so I'm not even disappointed by that. But, these Android devices, they have Super AMOLED Plus displays. They capture 1080p HD video. They have, what else? Just all these amazing specs. And, then Windows Phone, I know it doesn't support 1080p HD yet. It doesn't support dual-core processors, and it doesn't need one. But, maybe a better display, like what you're saying, basically, front-facing camera. So, yeah, I'm disappointed, but I'm not disappointed in the devices. I'm disappointed in Microsoft that they wouldn't, demand better hardware. I think they need a Jesus phone, to really bring them back, like the iPhone, I remember when the iPhone used to be called a Jesus phone. I don't know why. I think just because it was always like the end-all and be-all of smartphones, and so it was like, manna from heaven, but it's not like that anymore. So when, Microsoft needs a phone like that to really get people's attention. And so, yes, I was disappointed. Again, 5 minutes on one simple subject. Good job, Sydney. It's 5:04. We started this at 5:50, so I'll answer just a couple more questions, and then I gotta sign off, guys. As a company, I don't like Apple, but all my gadgets except my BlackBerry are Apple. That's Cameron from today's iPhone. By the way, today's iPhone, they're covering all of their editors. So if you visit the site or if you haven't visited the site and you want to know what's this today's iPhone or who's writing these articles, who are these awesome people? They're doing coverage on all of their editors so you can get to know them. And Cameron posted his little mini bio and how he got into technology and Apple products. So you can check that out on today's iPhone. It's actually quite interesting. And Cameron, while I read that, I tried to read it in a British accent. Not out loud, but in my mind, I tried to have a British accent just to make it a little more authentic. Like it was straight from you, you know? Do you know if the Nokia Lumia 800 has both? Oh, that's again from 20 minutes ago. Okay, one more question, then I gotta sign off. Let me see. Let me get a good one. I want to get a good question, a good last question. Sid, see my comment below. It's fairly important. There are no comments below. Okay, Sydney, how do you not like Apple and you own a Mac? I happen to own a Mac because of my job. We use iMovie, and so it's, kind of a requirement. That being said, although that's the reason why I have a Mac, despite that, now that I've used one, I would only buy a Mac now just because, again, it's like what I said earlier, it's the best computer experience. It's just performs so much better than a Windows PC. And I know there's like Windows PCs out there with 10 core processors and, hyper resolution extreme displays and all this crap. But they're like, $2,000. And, for just a computer, they're pricey. $1,000 is, still kind of expensive. But for me, it doesn't crash. It doesn't freeze. It just works. I know, it's so cheesy, but I can't believe I just said that. But it just works, And so that's why I use a Mac, and that's why I only buy a Mac. But again, it's like I said earlier, I don't like Apple, and I wouldn't use an iPhone, but I'm not so blind that I'm not going to be, I'm not going to be like, well, yeah, and all their hardware is crap, because that's just not true. They have the best ecosystem. They have the best computers. They had the best phone for a long time. And that's just a fact. And so if a MacBook is the best computer, then it's what I'm going to buy because I want to have the best computer. But I still don't like Apple. But, I'm not an idiot. I'm not so dumb that I'm not going to buy an Apple product just because I don't like them. Anyway, unless there's something better. If there was something better, I'll buy it. Okay, so that's all I have time for. I'm sorry if I missed your question. Question. Somebody pointed out on YouTube that I say question weird. I think I say question. Anyway, questions. What was I saying about questions? I'm sorry if I missed your question. Hopefully I answered enough. I forgot to say this in the beginning, but if you're watching this on YouTube, thanks for watching. Leave your comment below if you have a question, if you have a comment, if you have anything you want to say, if you think I did a terrible job, leave the comment below, and feel free to express your opinion because, hey, that's what the internet's for anyway. Opinions, exactly. I'll see you guys next week, same time, 5 p.m. Eastern time. We do have a guest for next week, so we'll have a guest. Yeah, you guys can enjoy listening to someone else besides me. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter, my screen name is It's My Job to Know. But I'll see you guys next week on Ustream. Bye.